Hello, everybody. It's me, Fee, otherwise known as White Zulu. I want to welcome you to another piece about my trip to Switzerland and settling in with the kind, gentle, and generous Ancho family, as well as their two other house guests, Jonty and Britta. I also meet Pierre, the oldest Ancho's son. The two girls introduced me to the téléphérique, which is the big glass lift that takes all the skiers up to the top of La Braille, a wonderful selection of different ski slopes, from the beginners to the most difficult of all, called the Black Run. They also show me the village and where we can skate on the frozen surface of the tennis courts. I do hope you're enjoying this series. I love the feedback which I receive from my most loyal subscribers, and I assure you that there are plenty more antics to come. And he retired to Chateau in Switzerland, where he'd bought a very big chalet very close to the well-known actor David Nivens. It was through the Buxtons that we'd heard about the Ancho family. Monsieur Ancho was a retired vet, and his wife took in 3 foreign students at a time to live as family members, learn to speak French, and ski. Her 2 children had grown up and left home, and she had this capacious 3-story chalet in the village, plus Therese, an older cousin of hers, who lived in and did all the cooking and housework. My older cousin Sandra had spent a few months with the Ancho family and had come back proficient in French, skiing, and most importantly of all, had absolutely loved the experience. This was where I was going to spend my next 6 months. Pat took Dad and me down to meet Madame Ancho at their chalet, La Fontanelle, and leave me there. Dad would then spend about a week staying with the Buxtons and skiing with Pat and June before returning to South Africa. I liked Madame immediately. She had a delicious twinkle in her eye, a good sense of humour, and was warm and welcoming. She quickly realized how limited my French was and could speak good English, but since neither Therese nor Monsieur Ancho had a word of English, the rule was simple. She'd only use English when we absolutely had to, otherwise it was French at all times. There were already 2 other girls there, an English girl called Jonty and a Danish girl called Britta. They'd arrived a week or so before I had, and had already formed a close bond. But they were cordial and friendly enough to me, and since we were all limited to French, we floundered along as best we could. I was given a huge double room with an ensuite bathroom to myself on the 2nd floor, with the Ancho's bedroom across the landing. Jonty and Britta were upstairs sharing a room, and Therese had the one next to hers. There were 2 more bedrooms upstairs in this spacious 3-story chalet, and the top 2 rooms belonged to the Ancho's son and daughter, which they used at weekends and holidays. Downstairs was the kitchen, scullery, sitting room, and a snug little TV room. Genial, tubby Monsieur, the retired vet, loved to watch TV, and since I'd never seen one before, I sat happily with him to watch it every evening after supper, while the other girls stayed upstairs in their room and smoked. It was the best way to learn French too. I absorbed it through the telly, as well as daily life, and soon became quite fluent. Typically, when we three girls were alone together, we spoke English, but always out of earshot of Madame. Britta was quite short, almost plump, with medium length, pitch black hair, wavy hair, and not at all how I'd imagined a Danish girl, how I'd pictured a Danish girl. Jonty was English. Whoops, I'm going to fall out of bed soon. And tall, with a curvy hourglass figure and long blonde hair, and exactly how I imagined a Dane would look. After my first night there, Jonty and Britta took me down to the cable car station to buy a season ticket for the Teleferique, which took skiers up to La Braille, the vast mountainside where all the ski slopes were laid out. The cable car took us up to a second station where we transferred to four-seater bubble cars, then eventually to a third area with a T-bar tow system that dragged us right to the very top, where there was a restaurant and a huge variety of pistes ranging from green, easy, to red, to black, which were the hardest and only for better or more foolhardy skiers. I was also enrolled in the École Suisse de Ski for beginners lessons. Dad had dug out Mum's skis, poles, boots, and some warm clothing, which had seen better days, from the storage loft at the Buxton's chalet. When I tried them on, my feet were at least half a size bigger than Mum's, being almost a foot taller than she was. Probably more. And this meant I couldn't wear thick, warm socks with them. Her Rossignol skis were too long for me, as we measured our skis in those days by standing and reaching one arm up straight. One's skis had to reach the fingertips, and these were substantially taller than the recommended height, because I couldn't reach the tips at all. God forbid that after spending an eye-watering sum on my time in Switzerland, they buy me new gear, which actually fitted me. That would be Mum's influence. She hated parting with money. If it fitted, it would do. And that applied to wedding dresses as well. The other outfits were a pair of black ski pants and a couple of old jerseys that had belonged to Sandra, plus Mum's nylon anorak or wind cheater, as they called them, a pair of woolen mittens and a woolen bobble hat. That was it. No ski goggles, no proper waterproof gloves, and no change of clothing when I invariably got wet in a blizzard or fell into the snow a couple of times and got wet. Since all the footwear I owned was totally unsuited to deep snow, Dad took me out to the local shoe shop and bought me a pair of black sealskin boots, which fitted beautifully, were lined with sheepskin and heavenly warm. Since the other two girls had already started lessons a few days earlier, Madame very kindly organized for her nephew, Louis Ami Mottier, to come over and give me a few starter lessons that afternoon. He came into the chalet, his cheeks glowing from the cold, and I was immediately bowled over by his good looks. He was gorgeous, handsome in a movie star way, and delightfully shy. His eyes were neon blue. His ruddy cheeks were tanned from skiing, and with his fair hair and tall, lean, muscular skier's body, he was stunning. What I didn't know at the time, but found out very soon afterwards, that he was hopelessly infatuated and in love with Jonty, my bouncy, vivacious, blonde English housemate. Louis Ami was clearly disappointed that I didn't resemble her in the least, with my tall and very slender body and short, wavy dark hair. But he resignedly and patiently showed me where to stamp out a small piece on Madame's sloping lawn, and how to perform a snowplow turn. This was when I discovered that skiing, which looks so easy, was like strapping 2 bars of soap to the soles of one's feet before stepping into a wet shower cubicle. I spent most of my time on my backside, all hopelessly tangled up in those extra long skis, and the ski poles with their sharp pointed tips, which caught me time after time in the most painful places. I was mortified to look so undignified under the tutelage of such a godlike figure as Louis Ami, but he was patently bored enough at having to spend an afternoon with me rather than the curvy and super confident Jonty, and couldn't have cared less how I looked. He did keep asking me hopefully, however, in his very limited English, what time Jonty was due home, though. Dad went home, and I got on with life at the Anchots. Our routine was very simple. We got up at 7, had a substantial breakfast of croissants, fresh out of the oven and baked by Therese, and coffee, then walked down to the cable car station about 500 yards down the street, carrying our ski poles. There we collected our skis from a locker system underneath the building, showed our season tickets, which we wore on a ribbon round our necks in a plastic pouch called an abonnement, and then boarded the cable car, which carried about a dozen people. When we were all packed in, the car called La Téléphérique, which smelt very strongly of damp wool, garlic, and Gauloise cigarettes, we went off swaying deliciously up to the next station. There we hopped into the bubble cars and carried on our upward journey. The first thing that struck me was the wonderful and utter silence that settled on us as we floated up in the 4-seater glass bubbles, dangling far above the pistes and looking down on the snow-laden trees on the slopes, which had early skiers, the men who operated the ski lifts, already weaving their way down the slopes far below us. The silence seemed to settle on us like a blanket, and I felt completely in awe to be in this extraordinary and totally alien environment. Britta and Jonty were with me in the bubble, and they also seemed to be affected by the views of the Alps around us, all deeply covered in snow, and smoked their early morning cigarettes quietly as we gazed all around us. This bliss was shattered by a loud "fuck" from Britta as she fumbled to fasten the clips on her ski boots, wearing her mittens. So suddenly shocked out of my pleasant reverie by this, I stared at her. She repeated the expletive with even more emphasis, and then, having fixed the problem, resumed smoking and gazing calmly out at the view. "What does fuck mean?" I asked her curiously. She looked at me in astonishment, and then at Jonty, who avoided my eye. "Actually, I'm not quite sure of the meaning, but it's a new English word that Jonty taught me," she said eventually, after some thought. "So what does it mean?" I now asked Jonty. She stared at me. "You're joking, right?" "No," I said. "I've never heard that word. What does it mean?" Jonty gave me another long, hard look and then said, "It's just a swear word. We're teaching all the Swiss guys English swear words, but not telling them what they mean. They do the same to us." It was true. Most of the first French words I learned from Pierre, the Ancho's son, especially, who was a couple of years older than we were, and so many other young Swiss people we came across, were unrepeatable in polite company. I found this out the hard way when I repeated them in the chalet. Madame was an old hand at this game and knew exactly what was going on. She firmly told me which words I should not use, under any circumstances. And after that, I swore merrily away. I swore away merrily with the rest of them, and also learned quite a few bad English words too. It may seem odd that I'd achieved the age of almost 18 before I ever heard the F word, but considering my sheltered life and education, it's not that surprising that I was so innocent. And, incidentally, I still didn't know what a lessee was. The worst I'd heard on the farm was a bugger off, either from Dad to the dogs or from my sisters to me. I certainly didn't know what it meant. At the third and last T-bar lift station, the girls led me over to the ski school where I met another guard. This one was called Roger Lenoir and had hooded, brooding, bad boy eyes, with which he cast a long, lingering gaze all over me and my body, especially my D-cups, before slowly replacing his mirrored sunglasses. I had the distinct feeling he was assessing me, and not for my skiing prowess. Again, I was stunned by how handsome he was. Like Louis and me, very tall and muscular in his snug, black, body-hugging ski outfit, while his slightly long, wavy black hair gleamed in the sun. He wore the uniformed livery of the École de Suisse, Swiss ski school, a scarlet zip-up windproof jacket with 2 white bands high up on the right arm. Roger lined us all up, about 12 beginners of all ages and from various different countries, and in his heavily accented English gave us some warm-up exercises to perform. This was not before time, as due to my ill-fitting boots and thin nylon socks, my feet had already frozen solid. He had us stamping, doing the ski kick turn and learning to move sideways uphill for a while, and then asked if we were all warm now. When he called out, "Are you all warm now, and can we begin the snowplow?" everyone nodded except me, who naively replied, "Non, mes pieds sont encore gelés." No, my feet are still frozen. He deliberately pushed his sunglasses back onto his ski hat, cast another long look at me, and then asked where I was from. "Afrique du Sud," I said proudly. He gave a Gallic shrug and, ignoring me, started the lesson. I hadn't made the greatest impression on him, I felt. And just like with Louis and me, I was a total loser. I was crushed. I really didn't want to be treated with contempt by all the ski instructors. They were all so stunningly handsome, and both Jonty and Britta had already been raving about the 2 Rogers as being the biggest catchers. Bagging an instructor was the #1 goal of every woman on those ski slopes, from straight out of school star-struck teenagers like me to predatory and rich divorcees. There was plenty of competition for them. They had their pick of the
best. Now that
That is all for the time being, and there's more to come next week. I would like to thank John Moslane for putting aside his Friday afternoons to help me produce these videos. Without him, I could not do this. I would also like to thank Sean van Vuren for his sterling work in uploading my videos to my YouTube channel, adding the photos, as well as managing my channel so professionally. If you would like to know more about my other works, I have written 5 books in all, and each one is autobiographical. Please visit my website at www.whitezulubook.com, where you will find a lot more information as well as plenty of photographs. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed my life story, and there is plenty more to come. A thumbnail photo will be attached each week, and thank you so much for all your support and all the very kind remarks you make in complimenting me on my work. I really appreciate it.